episode of Business Source, brought to you by Connecting Business, the show that gives you authentic conversations to help your business. There's no smoke and mirrors, just real people sharing their experiences. I'm your host, Lee Nightingale, and today I'd like to introduce Jon Simmonds to discuss his experience in the social marketing world. Jon is founder and managing director of Rocket Science Digital. Jon, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today on Business Source.
Thanks very much, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. Yeah, good to be here.
Excellent. Jon, clearly social marketing, social selling is massive at the moment, and there's so many businesses out there making a business out of this thing. And I guess rightly so, because the way in which we sell and market it's basically changed. It's completely changed from what it was even probably 3 or 4 years ago, even though we had that social element there. And I've had a few panelists on the show that have shared their thoughts, but I'm really keen to get your insights and views and experiences in this market. So perhaps we can start by sharing just a bit about yourself, your background, and the business, and what it is you do to help your clients.
My background, I've been in digital marketing literally since it started, back in the days when it was called New Media. So I was working for a database marketing company that was doing, if you remember the big old paper-based surveys, I used to work in desktop publishing.
Yes.
And I was doing the layouts for those consumer surveys, and then they'd go off and be typeset and all that kind of stuff, which was great. And they decided, though, because they were, one of the forerunners right at the forefront of consumer data collection, they decided they were going to try this new thing of collecting data online with some very rudimentary, web functionality, and setting up an email marketing division. And email marketing was like this big new thing that had never been done before, except for a few businesses in the States were doing it. And I was
when emails actually got through and were being read, people weren't being
spammed.
spammed.
Being read, but you had to think about what you put in the background, because Hotmail was still stripping out the backgrounds of emails, and people create these things and find they got white text and they couldn't be seen. And so totally new. And I was lucky enough to be picked as one of 4 people that was going to set this team up. So we jumped into email marketing and started doing this new thing. But for me, that was a great experience in transitioning from old school DTP over to the nascence of digital and starting to get an insight into consumer behavior online, into marketing online and the different triggers. And this all obviously grew over a few years, and from there I moved on to Corel Software, which is a Canadian software company who produced things like WordPerfect, which people probably remember if they're old enough, and Corel Draw and those sort of graphic solutions, and set up their e-commerce and digital marketing operations in EMEA.
Just a slight pause there. You mentioned the Corel Draw stuff, and I started out in my software sales career working for a wonderful company called Serif, who produced DTP, drawing and graphics, photo, digital, video software, literally 150, 200 call attempts a day, selling bundles of software and cameras and all sorts of stuff over the phone. So that was my introduction into, I guess, telemarketing in its rudimentary form, into software, into sales. So yeah, I'm fully familiar with the sort of Corel Draw type stuff, but amazing experience, and I'll dig deeper into that one.
I remember Serif, and it's as
still
you say,
going.
doing
really well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? A lot of these the software companies that you don't hear so much about now, because there's such a, I think because the market is so much bigger now. And there are so many about, but yeah, surprising how many of those long-standing businesses are still going. So you've probably you've had the same experience. There's a lot of sort of upgrade campaigns and cross-sell campaigns and moving people through the sales cycle. So you must have found the same kind of thing at Serif. I'd imagine you're moving people down that path.
Yeah, definitely. Now called Affinity. The company's still called Serif, but the brand of software they're selling whilst they do download versions, lots of online versions as well, but doing really well considering in their consumer market, and really sort of eating into the Adobe space. So yeah, gosh, I remember the dialer software would spit out, you know, a database of campaigns, and you'd just be going next, because someone had a flyer, and you're like, I'm not calling them, next, flyer, no, next, until you got to somebody that had at least made a purchase of something. You know, with the moans, we used to go back to the database team saying, what is this junk you're feeding us? You know, we need people that have actually expressed an interest at some point in our software, not that we just mailed out. But then if I was being harsh on myself, that's really where the SDR model is coming out now, in sense of, yes, we've sent them some marketing, so follow it up. Give them a call. You know, even if you convert 1%, 2% of those mailings that have gone out, that's revenue you wouldn't ordinarily have had. So it was a really fun, interesting, challenging, tiring, eye-opening experience for sure.
I can imagine that, and that's a side of the business that I've never been on. Fortunately, I've always been able to hide behind digital. But that's exactly what we found. So we're working with, you know, in some ways we were in competition with the offline sales teams, but you know, we had to make it work so that we were finding ways of addressing an audience that wanted to interact with a business online. And they were, you know, at that time, we're talking, what's that, 15 odd years ago. So, you know, it wasn't the case that everybody was choosing to do business online. So we found that, you know, there was an audience that we could use, and then the offline guys could have their kind of audience, and the two would sit kind of quite happily beside each other. And that's when social media marketing started to come into it towards the end of my time at Corel. Social media started to be a thing, and people started to look at how you could use social actually in a selling context, which, you know, was this totally new thing, because Facebook was around, but people were just using it for kind of, you know, playing games with each other and that kind of thing.
Sharing photos of their dinner and all that kind of.
Yeah, which they still do, and that's just moved to Instagram now, isn't it? And so we started actually using social media for marketing, and I was heading up the marketing team, and one of the guys on my team, you know, had the role of looking at social media, and we'd sit down and try and build strategies out. So fast forward to now, and really, you know, after a couple of other roles, I worked at Canon Europe for a few years, sort of big corporate role, and corporate's never really been my thing. You know, I've worked in corporate roles, they never sat particularly happily with me.
Yeah, me too.
You know, and it's just, I moved to a startup. I had the opportunity to go and work for a couple of wonderful people who had been directors at Corel, who I'd worked with, both worked for and worked alongside later in my career. So I jumped ship and went to work with them, and we had a brilliant year working at a tech startup that was funded by VC money from the US. And those guys decided they were going to rationalize their portfolio, and unfortunately ours are one of their smaller investments that they decided to wind down. So I found myself in the position of you know, looking for a job. Just started a family as well, so we've got a 1-year-old. I was spending, you know, huge amounts of time traveling. We lived about an hour outside London at the time, and so I was traveling to, you know, the far side of London and back on, you know, a journey that was going to take me 4 hours, 2 hours either way. And I thought, well, you know, I'm looking at roles I don't really want in corporates. While I'm doing that, let's see if I can, you know, get some work in as a freelance. And that very quickly grew into, hang on, you know, the work is there, the interest is there, and we've, you know, I've got the experience and the skills. So I set up Rocket Science. I thought, you know, what's missing from kind of the agency market is, you know, so many agencies are run by agency people. No disrespect to agency people, they're very good at what they do. But, you know, having sat in the meetings on the other side of the fence and realizing, well, we've got marketing agencies coming in trying to sell stuff to us that just wasn't practical, just wasn't going to work for the business. It was great from a, you know, big fancy campaign, let's throw lots of money at an agency perspective, but it didn't really understand the headaches of the business. So there was an opportunity to start an agency that, you know what, was actually built from the ground up by client-side marketers who understood, you know, really what it was that clients had problems with and could help to, you know, solve those needs. And Rocket Science started as a full-service integrated digital agency, as most do. And I think, you know, very quickly you realise that I mean, niching's become a very, you know, trendy sort of thing. But, you know, we realised that most of our work was coming through. Most of the requests we were getting through were social. The team that I built up around it was you know, very strong on social media, both for B2C and B2C. So we decided to focus down on that. We still do some other stuff. You know, clients ask us for websites, and if it's an existing client or someone they refer to us, you know, we can build a website. But we don't really, you know, we don't go and push on that, and we don't really try and get any PPC or SEO work in, because, you know, we've got partners we work with who will do that. So we focus on social media, and we kind of accidentally started to become a B2B agency, which was not in any way intentional. We got a couple of big B2B clients in sort of big data, AI, e-learning, online learning spaces. And so, you know, naturally built up a following in that kind of space and built up a client base there, which is, you know, fascinating stuff. And whilst big data may not sound that interesting, when you look at, you know, the social media content you can put out for a big data business, what you're talking about is AI, VR, all those kind of really exciting, fun things that big data supports. And that's that whole ethos of finding, you know, what your audience are interested in, what they care about, and how that maps onto what you as a business do, which is obviously core to what we do on social. So that became very interesting. That kind of tech side took off. But then we looked at the fact that, hey, look, we don't want to be pigeonholed as a B2B agency, because whilst that's great, we really love the B2C side as well. So we developed an offering for marketing agencies, so for branding agencies, creative agencies, that kind of stuff, who wanted to be able to offer social media services to their clients, but didn't want to build up a team in-house to do it. Right. So we developed a model where, you know, we partner with agencies, they use us as they need us, we can work kind of either through them or directly with their clients, which keeps us on the B2C side of things, gives us, you know, that fun B2C side of things to do. And that's where we found ourselves sort of end of last year, beginning of this year, when pandemic moved in and lockdown started to happen, which changed the landscape for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for sharing that journey. There's lots of similarities between us, albeit in different markets, but having worked worked up through the ranks, up through the sort of channel into the big corporate, decided not for me, back down. I say back down, but using all that experience and knowledge that you've gained throughout that career, and saying, I know that smaller businesses and scale-up businesses need this, so they get off on the right foot, so they can accelerate much quicker. And that's why I chose to operate in that space as well. And I really like the element of forming part of that marketing strategy, because I think when you talk about marketing to some people, they just don't really understand what goes on behind the scenes. They just think, oh, they'll do the website, they'll do some SEO and PPC, pay per click, as you say, and some white papers, and then why aren't they generating me hot leads? It's typically what sales think, and it's all about, you know, I need set marketing to give us more leads. But what they don't understand is, you know, that there's all that standard original stuff, the website, the pay-per-click, everything I just mentioned. Then there's this social side of it, and leveraging the new medium, the different platforms for getting the message out there. And there's a whole science to that, i.e. rocket science. Then you've got the marketing automation platforms, which require a different set of skills. You know, someone who really can understand tech, not necessarily develop, but these are core platforms that require week-long intensive learning programs to understand how to use just the basics. So that's a whole role in itself. And then you've got the data behind all of this. So leveraging the marketing automation platform, the finance system, the CRM system, how do you bring all this together so that you can produce a data set of the target people that you want to market to? Because it's not all about buying in databases, which invariably are rubbish. I've got experience of that, which I'll share with you in a moment. But first of all, make sure you're leveraging your own data as much as you possibly can. Something we've been getting into more and more over the last probably 2 or 3 years, to the point now where we're sort of advising clients, look, because of the size and the complexity of the data, there isn't one platform really that can do it all. So you've got your marketing automation system, you've got your CRM system, and there is crossover of data between the two in certain areas. And then you've got the finance data, and you've got the R&D data, you've got product data, you've got all sorts of different databases, if you like, and certainly within those databases, there's different tables. So we're now advising clients to have an external data warehouse, a third-party platform, whether it be SQL, MySQL, whatever you want to call it, where you can bring all of this data into one central place and run queries across the entire data set, linking multiple databases, multiple tables together to get to the target market that you want, because the complex queries or the criteria for getting to that data is too big for even something like Salesforce, which we're Salesforce partners. It just can't build that data set with all those different queries in it, linking together people that have or have not opened or clicked, or all those different marketing metrics that you want to incorporate within the query of, okay, well, bring me all clients that have got this product but haven't got that product, or have got this product and they've done this on our website, or whatever it is. Bringing all that together to produce a absolute laser focused marketing list is a whole different set of skills again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the traditional marketer, as I'm sure you found, and I'm keen to get your views on this, has completely changed. You've now got at least 4 main chunks of that marketing department. I'm sure there's more, and you'll enlighten me to that, each requiring a different set of highly skilled individuals.
What I think what's changed is, off the back of that is the specialism, in that when I started out, you had a lot of generalist marketers who would kind of do everything. But as things like marketing automation platforms became more commonplace, so it necessarily means that you've got a lot more specialists in their own particular areas. And again, I think the big trend for niching that happened, kind of last year through the agency world, is partly in response to that, because you found that clients were looking for specific skills they hadn't got in-house, or for individual parts of a network to have specific skills, because exactly the marketing machine they have in-house, it's no longer one generalist controlling everything. What's being fed into and processed by those platforms is you need someone who can focus on a particular area to feed stuff in. Otherwise, what you get, doesn't make a lot of sense. And those platforms have been a large part of creating that kind of specialism. And certainly what we found, I totally agree with you about, the understanding of it, in that with social media particularly, what we find is still the case today, that was the case a few years ago, is people are surprised how complicated it is, or how time consuming it is. Everybody thinks they can do social media, and because it's because it's easy technically to do, to put a post on Instagram or to put a post on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
You see so much poor quality, and in your relating to kind of the poor quality data that you talk about that comes back into the platforms. You see so much poor quality content going out at the front end of that, and the whole thing feeds through. That trying to educate people on, what makes for good social media content, what makes for, because what we do, it's all about, excuse me, it's all about building relationships, building connections, building things that are going to be of value to people, being authentic and adding value, and doing that it's a long-term process that requires a lot of thought and a lot of planning and a real structured approach to sort of social media channels. And it's surprising how many people still think that their cousin can do their social media for them because they've got an Instagram account, and we come across that a lot. And I think again, when you're looking at the data that you're going to get out of any given campaign, it's only ever going to be as good as the quality of what you're putting in terms of the content or the people you're attracting or whatever. So yeah, it's I think the two go very much hand in hand in that way.
Yeah, and even though you might be familiar with social media, there's a different style for each different platform, right? So whether it be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, there's a different style because the audience is slightly different in each of those different platforms, and the way they consume the content is different, and the way the content the way the platform itself allows you to deliver that content is different, whether it be character restrictions or images or whatever. So having an understanding of what the advantages, disadvantages, cannot do, features, functionalities of each of those different social platforms is key. And then the individual needs to have a real deep understanding of your business, your strategy, what your products are, how customers are using it, why they buy, and true in-depth, deep understanding of the business, so that they can pick whichever bits are relevant for the platform that they're delivering content to. And I know that sounds really complex, and it is.
It is, yeah.
It is, right?
And that's exactly how we work with clients. And we've adopted a very collaborative approach for and I couldn't have put it better myself, actually, Lee. You need to be able to represent their business. So what we bring is the understanding of how social media works and how social media platforms work, and we'll come to this in a minute, but that's one of the reasons we've developed that out into the training arm of the business as well. So we have that experience and we have that knowledge that we've gained over a lot of years and a lot of people. The clients have the understanding of the business and will never be as close to their business as they are. But the first stage of any project for us is getting a real deep understanding. First of all, we only ever work with people that we gel with. Like, when you talk to people and it doesn't quite click, we will walk away from a potential client if we feel it's just not going to work, because we have to understand their business. We have to understand their motivations. We have to understand what makes them, I don't say unique, but what makes them different, what makes them special. Otherwise, there's no way we can put that out convincingly across social media. We've got to be able to represent that as you would yourself as a client, So we work in a very collaborative way and spend a good chunk of time getting to understand the business, the individuals, and also what they care about, what the ethos behind the business is, what drives them, because that's going to come through in social media content as well, right? And this is one of the things we talk about in the training, is that you shouldn't be scared to talk about things that aren't your business. Don't always talk about your products and services. Don't talk about, you shouldn't do that too much anyway, but talk about the causes that you believe in, talk about the things that the company stands for, because then people buy from people. And it's when they see that, and social media is the ideal place to put that across, particularly with, even if you're talking B2B, the way LinkedIn has changed over the last year. It's become a lot more Facebooky. LinkedIn stories is a good thing, bad thing. That's a whole topic. Yes. But it has become, it's become a lot more personal, and that's a good thing, because it stopped being a job board. It stopped being a place where it's dry and dusty. it's now a living, breathing thing. And personally, I love that. I think it's changed for the better. But you know,
interesting. I'm not going to say. Yeah, we do differ on that. I'm gonna throw that out there. We do differ on that because
what's your beef with LinkedIn?
I don't want to know when it's someone's birthday or they've got whatever certification with Salesforce or whatever. Great, stick that on your Facebook or on your Twitter feed or whatever. But for me, the whole concept of LinkedIn was this professional business network for connecting people. And it's, you know, I don't want it to be Facebook. I don't want it to be Twitter. I need to go on there knowing what it is. And now it's just become a blob of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all mashed together. Call me old-fashioned,
but strategy will cut through that, because if your content mix is right, and you know, I would disagree with, you know, when it's a business's birthday or when a business has won an award or something like that, as an element of a content strategy, those kind of achievements and milestones are all very valid.
About individuals posting, wish somebody so and so a happy birthday. That's Facebook.
If you can make that relatable. So if it's, for example, if it's somebody on your team, okay, if it's somebody on your team and it's their birthday and you use the birthday as the introduction, every single post you put out needs to have a purpose. And I totally agree with you there. It needs to have a purpose, and that purpose is not just to say happy birthday to someone. If it's showcasing somebody within your business and their achievements or what they've done for your clients or that kind of thing, but you lead in with the personal touch of, hey, it's Sam's birthday today. She does this, that, and the other for us. And by the way, she's done these amazing things for these clients, and we couldn't be prouder of her. She's done an excellent job. It showcases that. Then that's fine. If it's just to say, yeah, it's my dog's birthday today, then absolutely, I'm with you. No. But I think, you know, and this is, I mentioned the training earlier. You know, with LinkedIn has changed a lot. And use grew massively at the start of lockdown, you know, 2,500 times. The number of active users, that kind of growth, you know, it's huge. And they're now they've gained they're up to about 700 million users, I think, now, whereas about a year ago, when you looked at those stats, they were quoting about 600 million. So again, massive growth all the way around. And we looked at two things. We looked at the way that the platforms were changing, particularly LinkedIn to start with. And we looked at the way business was changing in response to the pandemic and lockdown and the economic downturn and all that kind of thing. And we realized that, you know, as an agency, generally, you know, what we do is not cheap. And that's because it takes a lot of time. And that's one thing people expect if they come and say, you know, can you do my social media for 200 quid a month? Well, no, I'm sorry, we can't. I'd love to if I could help you out, but
there's loads of those people out there, by the way.
Exactly, there are enough people who will do, which is the thing. And that's why that's why people come to the assumption that it's cheap. You know, it takes a lot of time to do social media really well. It takes man hours, and part of that's the understanding of the business, part of that crafting the messages you're putting out and structuring them so that they do make sense, and you don't just end up with, yeah, it's Dave's birthday today, hooray. But you know, we kind of realized that employing an agency on a monthly basis, particularly these days, is not an inexpensive thing to do. So how could we still help businesses how can we help businesses win business without having to spend huge amounts of money? And that's when we thought, well, look, training, you know, what we've done for years and years and years, personally for ourselves and also for our clients, is to use social media and understand how social media works. And sure, we can, you know, you can pay us to do that, or we can train you to do it. And you know, we figured that as with budgets being squeezed, there's less money all around, and we see with clients, you know, budgets are squeezed right, left, and centre. It's often be a lot more cost effective to get training and do that in-house, and that can be for smaller businesses. It can be training for, you know, a business owner or a key individual. For larger businesses, it can be training sales or customer service teams so that they have, you know, more capability to win deals via social media, to attract new business, to know what they're doing and do it well, so that they're not just lost in that blob that you talked about. And so we set up rocket science training, and that is a real focus for us now. It's really pushing the training side of the business, because we've had so much amazing feedback on it. And honestly, genuinely, I'm blown away by some of the feedback we've had. You start something new and you don't know how well it's going to go down. There's always that kind of imposter syndrome, thinking, well, okay, we do this for clients, but when we tell other people to do it, is it going to make sense? And it's been brilliant. The feedback's been amazing. We do a masterclass, which is I would say an intro. It's more than an intro. It's a good inside couple of hours to get more out of LinkedIn. We also do a full 8 1-hour sessions, and we're developing sort of what is an intro to social media for all those businesses that are now starting up or having to go online, as you referred to earlier. So that they can get an understanding of how social media works. So we're really developing that out to try and it's easier to help more people by doing that than it is by trying to get everybody in the world to come and work with you. So it's been an interesting period for us, and a lot of it driven by those changes that you talk about in social. On
Fantastic. Social. I'm going to put you on the spot here. At some point, I'd love to sample some of what you're talking about. So perhaps we can use Connecting Business as I don't want to say guinea pig, because you've got tried and tested business which people are buying, but for me, my business, my audience, and my network, going to be great to get a sample, a taste of what it is you do, so that I can share that out with people. I don't expect you to respond, but I'm just putting that out there.
Absolutely, yeah, quite happy.
One thing that it sort of piqued my interest when we last spoke was this concept of writing as if you're in the room. And that something that resonated with me, and I'd really like to share with the listeners and viewers that concept, because I know you're a big believer in sort of the way in which you write needs to be relevant, and that's changed, particularly with this pandemic, and the fact that we're doing so many Zoom calls and GoToMeeting and other conference platforms are available, of course. But if you could share that concept of writing as if you're in the room.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's a really key one, I think, to all the communications that we put out on behalf of clients. And you see so many people who they'll quite happily in a business meeting or in a meeting with a prospect sit and talk quite naturally, but when they come to write it down, whether that's in an update, a post, a connection request, a follow-up message, their tone all changes and it all becomes very robotic or very corporate or very salesy, which is horrible. And we always tell people, write as if you're in the room with someone. When you're writing something, just imagine you're sitting across the table over a coffee with them and write down what you would say. Great example.
To the authenticity of it, and secondly, I think you're right. That robotic, people putting shudder phrases like reaching out and touching base and all this
exactly. Kind of... Yeah, cut out the jargon and the sales speak. Don't use contractions that you wouldn't. I mean, we never write "we are doing this" or "we will do that." It's always "we're" and "will." But you see people reverting to this really stilted way of writing. So when you're writing, there are two key things. One, write for one person. Okay, so you're not talking to when we as businesses do X, Y, Z. It's when your business is doing X, Y, Z, because you're talking directly to one individual, the owner of that business. And yeah, exactly. Talk as if they're sitting across the table over a coffee, because that's how you talk in real life, right? Always talk to people, right, as if they're in the room. And when you've written something down, before you post it, before you send it, before you do anything with it, read it through. And if it doesn't sound 100% natural, if you don't feel comfortable with it, that's because it's not right. And I've been guilty of that myself in the past. I've on occasion sent out, a connection request. And as I've read it through, I thought it just didn't feel quite right. It didn't sit quite right, but I've still sent it and it bombs, and I think gut feel will tell you whether it's right or not, but always, write for one individual and write as if you're talking directly to them in the same room.
fascinating. So what about rocket science then, and your business? How has that been impacted this year, and what have you done to ensure the survival as a bare minimum of the business, and looking to the future, setting yourself up to thrive again once we are all allowed to?
Yes. Well, we thought we were going to be okay at the start of the pandemic. So there were a couple of smaller clients who we could see how their business was going to be affected because they were very much face to face. One of our biggest clients was, as I mentioned before, they worked in big data. And we thought they're going to be absolutely fine. They're a tech business, they're going to be absolutely fine. What we hadn't banked on was most of their client base were based in hospitality and retail. So that obviously took an absolute hammering. And they, as a business, cancelled all agency contracts, whether it's PR or marketing or anything, because their business was really badly impacted. So of course we suddenly lost a large chunk of our revenue. Which was a blow. We weren't alone. A lot of businesses went through that, and thank goodness we weren't running a restaurant or a pub or something, so we could still operate. But I think, like a lot of people, it kind of went into free fall around that time, and we, because for a couple of weeks at the start of lockdown, you could see everyone was in the same position, and nobody really knew where it was all going to go. We had a couple of great clients who persevered, carried on, and took the approach which we recommend, not just because we want people to pay us, but genuinely, if you're going to come out the other side of this thing as a strong, thriving business, the knee-jerk, let's cut back on marketing, is the last thing you need to do. Because if you're not marketing your business, if you're not promoting your business, your competitors still will be. And when you come out the other side of this, you will have been forgotten and they'll be remembered. So we had a couple of clients who took that approach and stuck with us, which was, brilliant.
And I did the same thing. In fact, I commenced a joint venture with one of my partners and suppliers during lockdown, and we've been promoting that. And quite rightly, we asked ourselves, is this the right time to be doing that? And doing a LinkedIn campaign is, spending money like that. And we came to the conclusion that if we don't start now, all we're doing is shifting that brand awareness further to the right in terms of awareness and connecting with the people that we want to connect with. And if we keep putting it off because there's a pandemic, well, we have no idea how long this thing is going to be going on for. And as it transpires, it looks like it's going to be a year, from March to March. They're saying that March next year is when they hope to get the most vulnerable people given the vaccine, and then there's still the other tens of millions of people that don't fall in that category to vaccinate. So we're well into sort of summer and autumn next year before things dramatically start changing. So we leveraged the LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which was a platform we hadn't really used before. And I mentioned earlier on the show that I had a bad experience of data, and that was email data, by using an email marketing company who gave you access to their data, and it was shocking.
Lots of it is.
And so we thought, well, let's use LinkedIn because we can do our own search criteria of all the types of people that we want to be connecting with. The only thing that it doesn't give you is an email address, but that shouldn't be a barrier because you can still connect with them. And we try to use the in-mail functionality, but you're limited as to how many you can send because people would just abuse it. And so we reverted to the connection request, and we tried various different styles with that, but that seems to have had a much better result. Short, sharp, hey, really like what you're doing, love to connect with you, and here's the reason why I like what you're doing, would really want to connect with you, and by the way, would really love to get you on our podcast and hear your views. So a slightly different approach, other than And you're going to shake your head because you've experienced this. The amount of LinkedIn connection requests that I get sent with zero message. Just a simple connection. They've done the hard bit in finding you, and then they've just hit connect with no message, no context, nothing. And
If you
so
can't be bothered to personalize it,
yeah,
then don't bother sending it. You know,
so
people
I don't accept, and at times, depends on what day you get me, but I reply back saying, I only connect with people if there's a genuine need there, one way or the other, or mutually. How can I how can I help you, or how can you help me? And you get no reply. So there's just a completely wasted effort just because somebody's got a target somewhere of X number of connection requests sends a day or a week or whatever.
Well, it's building a relationship, isn't it? It's all about building a relationship, and it's, there are limits. So I always think that first step in building a relationship, if you can't be bothered to just put in a personal note, a short note from yourself, then why bother? Because that's not going to start a relationship, and you don't want to go to the extent where you're one of those people who sends messages saying, "Hi, how are you doing today? And what have you been up to recently?" And because nobody wants to talk like that, but you can still
Two or three messages in, yes, once you've established rapport.
Once there's a relationship going there, but at the outset, introduce yourself, just say hi, and you say, so why are you looking to connect? No salesy stuff ever until you've developed a dialogue, and then you can, and then quite openly, and I completely agree with your approach. Introduce, because people know, once you're, if you're connecting with someone on LinkedIn, they know there's a very high chance that at some point you're going to try and sell them something, because that's what the platform's all about. But it's not 2015 anymore. So don't connect with me with a impersonal request and then tell me how great your business is and why I should use it, because I don't want to know. I guess you'll get hundreds of those. At some point, a few messages in, if I think there's some value, then you introduce your business to me and you tell me, that you think, because there's no problem in, the way I approach this, the way I approach it for clients and the way I approach it in the training is, people are aware that you're probably looking at them, wanting to sell them something. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to find people who are interested in what you're selling. You're not trying to go out and, bully people who don't want it into spending money with you, which is what too many people still do. You're going out and using a legitimate network as a way of saying, look, hi, this is who we are. Kind of exploring whether there's any interest there. If this is something that, if what we do might be of interest to you, great, let's have a conversation. If it's not, that's cool, sorry about that. Bear it in mind if you need it. But no, I agree. There's so many people that still go about it the wrong way, aren't there? How many requests do you get a day to connect from people where you just look at it and you go,
oh my goodness, it's shocking. Switching to John, the man himself, and your daily routines, without going into too much detail, but clearly we've all had to adapt and change. And me, I'm not going to say lesser, but I had more familiarity with working from home. I've had home office for 5 years, so there was less of a disruption. I was only traveling to client offices. But what was life like for you pre-March, and how have you been impacted in the family? And then perhaps if you can share, because I'm really keen to understand different people's ways of keeping themselves motivated, keeping themselves fit, healthy, sharp, that kind of stuff. What kind of activities did you get up to as an individual, perhaps as a family, that sort of to keep things normal, and keep yourself going?
Well, actually, much like you, Lee, we weren't impacted too badly in that sense, in that I had worked from home when I started the business for quite a few years. Almost exactly a year before lockdown, we'd moved into an office, but that was only 5 minutes down the road. So again, that was the interesting thing, I think, readjusting to working from home, because I found that once we moved out into the office, and that was me and my co-founder, who lives fairly locally, we're the only two who were ever in the office, because the rest of the team is remote anyway.
Right.
but that was a real change of headspace, and moving into an office made it feel so much more grown up as a business. And then moving back home, especially with small children who are now a little bit older than they had been, and trying to do homeschooling, that was, that was not an easy transition at all. It's a very open plan property as well, so there's nowhere to get away from it really. So yeah, that was a real readjustment. But like you, I guess, I was lucky in that I had working from home routines before, so we kind of stuck to that. So it wasn't too much of a difference. And obviously working with the team, I can only imagine what it must have been like for some businesses trying to adjust to having remote teams who've never done it before. But yeah, so that wasn't too bad. And I think in terms of what kept us sane, really, I mean, for me, it was a great opportunity because as I said before, when I started the business, I had a 1-year-old, so I got lots of time sort of to spend with her while I was getting the business growing. So it's kind of a return to that as well. Okay, she's off at school, but we've got a 2-year-old now, so she's around, so it's time to spend with them, which is really nice.
Great.
But we spent a lot of time walking because we are very lucky in where we live. There's countryside just 5 minutes down the road, so we could, without breaking any of the lockdown rules, we could hop in the car, go 5 minutes down the road, and you're in countryside. And that was a really nice way of just kind of, getting away from the desk, getting away from work, forgetting about all of it even existing, and just spend half an hour or an hour. And oh my God, how blessed were we that the spring and summer was bright and sunny. Can you imagine what it would have been like if it had been raining constantly? So, that's what
I
really
think
worked.
if the start of this lockdown had started now, sort of coming into winter, well, I don't know, because, we wouldn't have been used to it, and, we'd have been new into this lockdown feeling in the dark, cold, rain, because it was quite fun and jovial to start with, wasn't it? Everyone was really excited. Yeah, I'm working from home and I can go and sit in the garden and I don't have to commute, and we can go on walks and I can start to do all this running and everything. And now we're still in it, and it's dark and it's miserable and it's cold and it's raining, and we're starting to get frost in the morning, and it's dark when you wake up, and it's dark by 4 o'clock, and it's it's really difficult to sort of get yourself going. But
don't you find that in the mornings? I'm sure you find so. The one big thing I find is that through the summer, when it's bright and sunny and the birds start tweeting at like 5 o'clock, or God knows what time, you could leap out of bed and bound. But now, do you find the same thing, that now it's dark and it's cold and you're working from home, so you don't have to be up at a certain time to get a train or get in the car, so you're at the office, it
well,
doesn't
John,
make it much harder to get up.
I'm in the situation that you were back then when you started the business. My daughter our daughter is coming on 15 months old. So when we went into lockdown, she was 5, 6, 7 1/2 months old, 8 months old. So now, we're 6 a.m., 6:30, she's starting to stir. She wants to get up. She's gibbering away in her cot, and then certainly by come 7, it's get me out of here. I want to start playing and get my milk and everything. So yeah, our days are very long.
I know what that feels like. Yes.
We've all hammered all of the streaming TV, movie systems and platforms that are all out there. I don't want to name any, but have you watched anything recently that's sort of stuck out in your mind that you thought, hang on a minute, I could relate that to business? Because we've all watched loads of documentaries and films and TV shows and all that kind of stuff that's just mind-numbing, that sees us through the evenings. But from time to time, we watch stuff that it kind of inspires us and makes us think, I can use some of that.
Yes, well, bizarrely, and if anybody's, I'm sure a lot of you will have watched this, Tiger King. People told me it was great. People told me we should watch it, and started watching it and got absolutely transfixed. Joe Exotic, the main character in this, is larger than life, doesn't even come close. And it's bizarre because watching it, I could actually get inspiration for the business from that. Now, the guy is an absolute nutter. all right?
That sounds
And the
left
whole
field, John.
program, well, the whole program really, it's an object lesson in how not to run a business. But the guy himself, there were two things that really inspired me. Okay, one, his absolute dogged determination to never give up, and no matter how bad things got, and I won't give away what kind of happens towards the end, but even when things are at their absolute worst, he just never accepts that it's done. All right, and what he does with that, the way he approaches that, okay, it's not the best way to run a business, but you can't help but admire the fact that he's not just going to lay down and roll over. And I think there's a great analogy there for everything we've all been through over recent months. The refusal to give up and give in and be beaten is absolutely admirable. And the other as well is, I mean, the guy's an absolute egotist, but he's the master of self-reinvention. And every time things get to a certain point, he will find another creative approach, either to push himself forward, or a way to reinvent kind of what he's doing with the business. And again, the way he goes about it, absolutely shocking. And you can't recommend to anyone. But again, just that creativity and that vision, that innovative approach of going, right, I need to change something. And again, it is a real kind of eye-opener for the times we're living through, in the way that so many people are, I've really got off the word pivoting, but pivoting, and changing the way they do business. And you look at what all the restaurants and the pubs are doing about the way they're doing deliveries, that kind of stuff. It really stood out as here's somebody who really, again, would always come up with a creative solution.
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend it as a model, but so watch that and see what you think, because I think really food for thought.
Thanks. Because I think there's a massive misconception with some people who think these successful entrepreneurs made it on their first attempt and are now multimillionaires. That almost never works. It's extremely rare that you can find something so unique and new that first time works and it just balloons and makes you a multimillionaire. It just doesn't work like that. I'm not going to say life's more difficult than that. Business is far more difficult than that. There's so many different iterations of whatever it is you're doing you need to go through before it even should be ready to be presented to people. Loads of failings, loads of learnings, and a lot of these entrepreneurs that are successful now have gone through multiple failures. They don't mind admitting that because they don't see them as failures. They see them as ways to grow, develop, and learn, which is critical. Because some people just, they take the failure really personally. Oh my goodness, I failed, and I'm not going to sit here and tell people how to feel and think, but I'm just trying to explain the differences between those successful people and how their brain works. Is they don't see it as of course they feel when something fails, they feel the pain of it, but they don't take it personally. They accept that it's just one of those things, and now I can sit here and dwell upon that, or I can learn from it and do something else. I can do it differently. I can do it better. And if I fail at that, understand why I failed again and do it again and again. And it's that doggedness, that determination that sounds like your man on Tiger King had.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. I mean, we've all been through that process, haven't we? And I remember when the phrase "fail fast" started to come in. If you get it wrong, that's fine, but learn from that and move on and use that to build, version 2. I think that's absolutely right. I'm sure you've seen, the kind of businesses you work with. I'm sure people, the really successful businesses that you're involved with, I'm sure they've gone through many iterations, and what they look like now is not what they looked like when they started.
Absolutely. John, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. Some fascinating things for me to digest and understand. And I'm going to take you up on that very kind offer or spot that I put you in to help me out. And I'll let the viewers and listeners know how that worked out. But thanks so much for your time. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today on Business Source.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Lee. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, it's great to catch up. Really enjoyed the talk.
No worries. So thanks to John Simmonds of Rocket Science Digital. Please do connect with him on all those social platforms that we just mentioned throughout the show. And thank you for joining us on another episode of Business Source. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.